Recording. And so today we are here with Anthony Jenkins from Speech Language Education Associates. And we're going to be talking, he's going to be talking to us about using motivation to increase positive behaviors. Thank you so much for being here with us, Anthony. We really appreciate it. This is a topic that's been widely asked for, so we're so happy that you guys are here to present this.
Thank you. I know this is a topic that comes up a lot with parents. You know, for our clients, it's probably one of the fundamental things we work on all the time. Even our school clients, parents are always asking us, how do they increase behaviors in the home setting? And so I know this one too well. I know people really, and I want to give you guys a different perspective on behaviors today, because I think oftentimes when we think of behaviors, we think of the negative, inappropriate, maladaptive behaviors. But today we're going to talk about how you get rid of those behaviors by increasing some of the more positive behaviors. Okay, if I just jump right into the next slide, get into it.
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay, so our agenda for today, I want you guys to be able to define behaviors and think about those behaviors specifically for your child. And then think about, start to give you guys a better understanding of motivation and how that contributes to behavior. And then determine how to identify motivators for your child specifically. And then we're going to talk about some strategies really quickly about cooperation and a few things you can do to increase cooperation, which ultimately will lead to better behaviors. And then we'll talk a little bit about identifying and using those motivators to get specific behaviors. Okay, so when you hear the term, what is behavior? When I talk about behavior, I like to give people this extremely fancy definition that behavior analysts use, just so everyone knows how serious we are when it comes to behavior. So I'm going to read it for you. Behavior is that portion of an organism's interaction with its environment that is characterized by detectable displacement in space through time of some part of that organism, and that results in a measurable change in at least one aspect of the environment. That is the most fancy definition, one of the most fancy definitions we have in behavior analysis. But you can make that a lot easier. It basically is, that long definition basically says behavior is anything that a person does. And so walking, talking, jumping, running, those everyday, running, eating, those everyday things are all considered behaviors. And I know most of the time people think of behaviors, they think of the negative ones, kids having tantrums and biting other kids on the playground and throwing toys and those type of things, property destruction. But this is what behavior is as well. So I want you guys to think about that as we go through this. All right, so we talk about behaviors. There's two ways to look at it. You think about some of these behaviors: crying, sleeping, sneezing, and literally, as I said, crying, a little kid's walking down the hall in our office crying. Sleeping, sneezing, yawning, coughing, chewing. These are unlearned behaviors. Babies are born and they automatically know how to do these things. Some behaviors aren't learned innate. For us as humans, we are born predisposed to these behaviors. But all other behaviors are essentially learned. And even the kids who fall on the ground and cry when they don't get the thing that they want, they've learned that. That's been a learned behavior. It's not something sort of natural to them, although it seems natural because all kids learn it. And so what we know is behavior itself is learned in an environment. And if it works, we keep using it. Behavior learns to adapt to the environment. So even, the negative behavior that we see from kids, in some small way, it's effective and it's working. And that's why it continues to occur. So if it works, we keep using it. If it does not work, we try something new. It's rare that the bad behavior doesn't work and they try a better, more socially appropriate behavior. Typically, if a negative behavior doesn't work, they usually just try a more negative behavior. Now, key to this, I will do a lot of drawing on this thing here today, is to change behavior, we have to change the environment. And I'm gonna give you another one of these fancy definitions. Environment. So when we talk about the environment, we're talking about this complex physical circumstances in which the organism or reference part of the organism exists. This includes any physical event or set of events that is not part of the behavior and may include other parts of the organism. That's, once again, one of our most fancy definitions. Talking about definition, an environment, we're talking about this dynamic universe, place, but it's really person, place, and things. And behavior always occurs in an environment. And that environment is usually us, especially with kids. Like, we're the environment for children. And so in order to change their behaviors, we have to change the environment, which typically means we're going to have to change some of our own behaviors. And I always say, behavior is one of the easiest, hardest things to change. Sometimes you know exactly what you need to do. You want to lose weight? Stop eating fatty foods and fast food and work out more. Easy peasy. Problem is, to do all those things involves changing a lot of other behaviors. So the discipline at the table, starting out working out, even just 5 minutes and 7 minutes and 10 minutes. So it's a lot of effort that's involved. And oftentimes, in order to change behavior for children, there's going to be some effort involved. And so I don't want you guys to think I'm going to come up here and give you a magic wand or some simple, easy strategy for changing behavior. There are strategies, and they may seem simple enough, but they're going to require a certain amount of effort. All right, so behavior. So the key to increasing behavior, and this is the topic that I use to name the talk. The key to increasing behaviors that you want is learning how to, I'll use manipulate, but not the bad way. Navigate, manipulate motivation. So we engage in behaviors that produce the outcomes you want. Kids do it, adults do it. And for children, we get to control their outcomes. So as parents, we can control the outcome of their behavior. So they engage in inappropriate behavior. We can make sure that that inappropriate behavior is not effective. Make sure that it doesn't work, so they have no reason to use it again. And then we also have the ability to withhold those things that we know are really motivating for the kids, that we only deliver them when they engage in behaviors we want. Now, sometimes it's going to take a little bit of effort to teach those behaviors that we want, because they haven't engaged in them before, so they may not be aware of what those behaviors are. But we can teach them, and then we can use the things that are motivating for them. And for this training, I got a whole bunch of pictures off the internet, which I thought were fitting, and this is one. Motivation is what makes behaviors start, stop, and continue. If something, you're motivated to do something, that will start it. If it doesn't work, that will stop that behavior. If it does work, you're going to do that thing again. And it's about the intensity of the behavior and choices made. The more we want something, the more motivated we are going to be to get that thing. So in brief, motivation is what makes us move in the ways we do. All right, so I keep talking about motivation. In our field, we have a term that we call reinforcer. And the key is to understand what those reinforcers are. Today, I just labeled them as motivators. What are these things that are motivating for our clients, for your children? All right, so I made a nice little acronym here, but when you think about the things that are preferred, desired, most motivating for your children, you're probably looking at these items. One, tangible items, their toys, their iPad, anything that's manipulable they can use. And think about it as adults, the things we find most motivating. I don't think most of us now can go more than 5 to 10 minutes without looking at our phones. It's tangible. It's like one of the most motivating things we have. And then we look at activity motivators. All kids love engaging in some of their favorite activities. And the big one here, the one we're going to talk a little bit about today a lot, social motivators, social reinforcers, high fives, hugs, and the big one, praise, comma there. And then talking about our favorite thing. Sometimes you can motivate a kid by just giving them your attention to talk about things. Now, talk also about tokens, symbolic points to be exchanged for favorite things, giving kids stars. You get 5 stars, you're going to earn the thing that you really, really want. And it could be something tangible. It could be their favorite food or drink. But those stars start to have power. We'll talk a little bit today about how to maximize that. All right, so here is, and I can't see the top of my screen here, but here's a reinforcer checklist. So typically I'll give this to parents. so that they can identify the most motivating things for their kids. And this is important because these are the things that you're going to use to get the positive behaviors that you want. So logistically, how can we do this? I wanted people to take a few minutes to complete one of these and just jot a few things down for yourself so that we can further have a discussion about using these things to get things that you want. So 3 minutes. Is that enough time for you guys to jot down a few of these? And Myra, you can pause for maybe 3 minutes. And so give them a chance to write some things down because I want them to have an idea as I'm talking about some of the next steps. And Myra can't see. Is that possible? Okay. So once you complete this reinforcement checklist, and I really like having parents do kind of one for themselves and one for their kids. So you get a good idea of the things that you find most valuable. Now, this is important because these are the things that you're going to use to get the behaviors you want. Your kid has a particular favorite food. I'm going to add, I mean, typically I ask parents to sort of adjust a little bit how they, give them access to that. If you, let's say kid's favorite food is Happy Meal at McDonald's, and they give it to the kid every other day just because they think their kid's the sweetest. But there's some behaviors they want their kids to improve. I typically would tell the parents, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to withhold the access to that desired item. And then we're going to start putting in a few contingencies. You want access to the Happy Meal? Well, that's going to determine on how clean your room is. You want access to the Happy Meal? Well, that's going to determine how many times you brush your teeth a day. You're going to start to use those things that are very, very valuable to them to get them the behaviors that, aren't necessarily extreme deficits, but it's really kind of a motivation thing. Like they do it sometimes, but not all the time. If you take the things that are very, very reinforcing for them and motivating and powerful, you can improve their behavior. All right, so we have edibles, tangibles, their favorite activities, the favorite sensory and social work reinforce that you have. And today we'll talk a little about how to use tokens to be effective to increase some behaviors. All right. So operating motivation. And so the point I made there earlier, when we haven't had access to something, that thing becomes more valuable. In my field, we use the term deprivation and satiation all the time. And I don't want to get like hyperbolic and extreme, like, oh, when a kid's deprived of having candy. But when they haven't had access to their favorite candy for a day or so, the value of that item is going to increase, which means when it becomes more valuable, any behaviors that it's going to take to get access to that, it's probably going to increase as well. Just like if you gave your kid 10 cookies, the value of it's going to go down, which means behaviors that get some access to cookies is also going to go down. So you have to find a way to keep it kind of in the middle. Like, how do we work this to the point where I'm giving them just enough cookies to keep them motivated? Give them too many, they won't be as motivated. So that's when we talk about starting to manipulate the access to those items. And one of the ways you can do that is just withhold it. And you can, make it available during specific times. If your kid loves, the iPad, but doesn't necessarily like doing their homework, only time they can get access to that iPad or earn access to that iPad is during that window of time when they have to be doing their homework. So, great job doing your homework. That's going to determine how much iPad you have for the rest of the afternoon or evening. And it's really important that, you set some specific times and then you withhold that particular thing. Just like, if you let your kid eat cookies all day, when it comes time to eat broccoli for dinner, they're probably not going to do it, even if that's going to earn them ice cream because they've already had access to a bunch of sweets. So you have to sort of, become a little more aware and conscious of like, okay, I have to think about what have they had access to and what can I restrict so that I can use for getting some pro-social behaviors, which is something that we use in my field. Have this fancy name for it, but it really comes down to grandma's rule. First, eat your broccoli, and then you get access to ice cream. And there's a really funny commercial on television about parents going to Las Vegas. They basically tell the kid that everything to eat, the most preferred favorite food to eat in Vegas is broccoli. And the kid thinks about like, you know what? I don't think I'm interested in going to Las Vegas anymore. And their whole point was to try to trick the kid into not wanting to go. Why? Broccoli is not very tasty for most kids. But if eating broccoli It's the only way you're going to get access to dessert. You're probably going to be more interested in doing that. And so with grandma's rule, we always going to try to look for that first, then relationship. First, if the kid doesn't like brushing their teeth at night or taking a bath, first take a bath, brush your teeth, then you'll get access to your favorite movie. Or first, brush your teeth, take a bath, then you get access to your iPad. And sometimes it's really difficult because most kids are gonna, they're gonna pout a little bit. And they're probably gonna make things hard for you, but you have to stick with it because the only way you're gonna get the behaviors you want is if you can manipulate and control their access to their preferred things. And I know most kids have access to iPads and video games and toys and all those things. And I'm not asking you to take those things away altogether. I'm just saying take the ones that are most valuable to them and use them to your benefit. All right, so think about these scenarios. That's why I had you guys do the reinforcer checklist. My kid likes to eat, but they really don't like to eat blank. So let me think of myself. I don't really like to eat most things. I have a really extreme food selectivity, so I'm probably not a great example here, but I'll say tomatoes. But I really like to eat hamburgers. And I picked that because tomatoes are apparently good for your heart. I need to probably start working on that type of stuff. So I'm going to increase my eating of tomatoes starting tomorrow. I'm going to find ways to take small pieces and incorporate that into my diet. I'm going to use a very contingency, like, all right, in order to eat a hamburger, the first 5 bites or 4 or 5 bites will have to be small pieces of tomato on that particular thing. But think about that, there's a food you want your kid to increase. Think about my child likes to eat. It's funny, isn't it? Like, that's they use broccoli to their advantage, and then the kid never likes to eat the broccoli. All right, my child likes to, but really does not like to what? And so if you think of an activity that your kid really doesn't like doing, anyone want to put something in the chat here? I want to keep using my examples because you guys will start to think I'm a weird person. I want to give examples here. Like my child likes to, but does not really like to. She ever done want to make fun of your kid at the same time? All right, I want you to be thinking that in your head. Like, my kid really likes to watch YouTube. Well, who doesn't? All right, so YouTube. My kid really likes to watch YouTube, but really does not like to do homework. Oh, that's the perfect one. Exactly. All right, so in order to do this, we have this other thing we call the deprivation hypothesis, response deprivation hypothesis, meaning you tell your kid you now are only allowed to watch YouTube for 10 minutes a day. And they're going to cry and scream and tell you you're the worst parent in the history of parents. And you say, but if you do homework, I will increase your access to YouTube. So if you do 1 hour's worth of homework, I will match that with 1 hour worth of YouTube. Or you can, come up with a better ratio since they don't like doing any homework at all. If you do 1 hour homework, I will give you 2 hours of YouTube. So 1 hour homework, 2 hours of YouTube. No homework, only 10 minutes of YouTube. And there's nothing on YouTube you can only watch for 10 minutes. So now you have this thing that's very, very powerful to them, and you show them a way to do it, way to get access to it. And you kind of put the power in their hands. You control your life here. You can control the outcomes. All you have to do is 1 hour homework will be equal to 2 hours of YouTube. Most kids will take that deal. And so think of that to yourself. I want my child to increase, and I will use blank to motivate them. So start thinking in those terms. Like, what's the most powerful thing that I have that I can use to increase this kid's behavior? And trust me, it's not going to work well the first time. Kids are not going to like this new system. And what happens when you put a new system in? there's usually a revolution. They're going to revolt. They're going to go, a horrible parent. They're going to write notes that you can see, like, my parent is awful and I'm going to leave them. But over time, they're going to think to themselves, like, you know what? All right, there's a new regime, new way of doing things. I'm going to get on board, or I'm never going to watch YouTube again. And YouTube is probably one of the most powerful motivators on the universe. There's nothing you can't find on YouTube that's entertaining. So think about that. You're going to try to find ways to use things that they probably already have access to. Most kids already get access to some fast food. They already get access to some treats and sweets that you put in the house. Most of them all have some sort of electronic devices these days, as well as, videos that they like, movies that they like watching. There's 9 million streaming services, so it's almost every movie's at your fingertip. As parents, you have to find ways to use those things that are very, very valuable to motivate them to engage in behaviors that you want. All right. So in the interest of time, I'm going to quickly get into this. This is a strategy that I teach parents when I teach parent training. It's about improving, I've changed the word compliance to cooperation. So it's about improving cooperation in children. And this is based on a 6-week process or a 6-week program. I usually call it steps because, most of the time you really can't go. It's tough to go a whole week doing some of these things. So these are the 6 steps. I'm quickly getting. So the first one is, setting the stage for your child's cooperation. So one of the ways to improve cooperation is you have to work on some of the small things that go into increasing cooperation. One of them is increasing proximity. Whenever you give an instruction, you want to make sure you're an arm's distance away. So that's the recommendation, at least 1 arm's distance. Almost so the kid knows that you could grab them and make them do it if you really, really need to. But sometimes when you give an instruction from across the room, the kids they're calculating. They're thinking to themselves, I can keep doing what I'm doing, and it would take them at least 10 seconds to get over here. And probably another 15 seconds before they realize I'm probably not going to do the thing they asked me to do. And then the kid thinks, worst case scenario, I have another 25 seconds of playing with my toy. But if you walk over to them and get very, very close before you give the instruction, you're now going to get their attention. So the first thing is, when you're about to give instructions or requests, make requests of them, make sure that you're close enough so that you can help guide them if need be. So children listen best and adults are close in proximity. So remember that. So you want to work on that for a day or so. And some of the kids will be freaked out at first because they're like, why are you so close to me? It's like, oh, I just love you and I want you to listen to what I'm saying. Next thing is getting their undivided attention. Every time I read this or write this down, I laugh because I'm pretty much the same way. If you are going to tell me something, you have to ensure that I put my phone down and I'm not doing 3 things at once that I typically usually do. So the first thing is gain their attention. So after you've gotten close enough, then you can come up with some, phrases. Sometimes it's better to have cute phrases. Sometimes it's better to have like a little ritual, like a fist bump or a high five, a special handshake. And that lets them know, okay, now we're together, we're simpatico. I'm going to be giving you an instruction. But you definitely want to make sure you have eye contact. You definitely want to make sure that they're dialed into what it is you're going to say next. Like I say, create a few simple phrases to gain their attention. And the child may have your attention, or, so-and-so, what you doing? When you look at you and tell you, okay, good. Now that I have your attention, let's talk about the thing that's going to come next. And this all works a lot better if your proximity to the kid is close. And the key, we're going to keep talking about this throughout, is providing praise when they get attention. You want to now make them giving you their attention the most positive thing you've ever seen. You want to make a real huge deal about it. You want them to know that you appreciate so much them giving your attention. Next step, and we all make this mistake of not giving very short, clear instructions. Give active instructions where you're telling the child what it is you want them to do. Not pick up your backpack. Might as well tell them that backpack needs to go. Put your backpack in your room on the hanger. Put your shoes in the closet. Take your plate and put it in the sink. Not put your plate away, because that means they can put it anywhere and it could still be satisfying in the request. But you want to make sure you give them very, very specific instructions of things to do. And I know sometimes when we're talking to kids, we like to be funny, tell a long story. This article gives an example of cleaning the room. You know, clean up your room. It's going to be a pigsty. No one's going to ever come visit you in your room. Like, that's all too complex and long. Just tell them very, very briefly, clean up your room. Now, if you want to give them specific things of put the toys in the toy chest, put the clothes in the hamper, and make your bed. That's just, you know, we can leave all the other talk out, but we want to be very specific about what it is we need them to do. Unless you're giving them a choice of activities to engage in where, you know, you're going to engage in one of these two, try to not issue questions like, hey, do you mind picking up your shoes? Because they could say, no, I don't mind. And then they answered your question. Always use it in a statement. Keep those statements short, keep them brief, and keep them very active, whereas you're telling them exactly what it is you want them to do. And this is just a good model. But always add please to your instructions. I know they're your kids and you pretty much fund their entire lives and you should be grateful, but at the same time, we want to make sure we're modeling for them really good manners and etiquette when it comes to that. Even if it's like, put your shoes in the closet, please. And then make sure you thank them for doing that. And once again, when they comply with the request, we'll talk about some more strategies here in a second, you want to make a big deal every single time. You never want to get to the point where it's almost like they're supposed to do it or they expected to do it. They are, but they're kids. And so you want to make sure you're still making a big deal about it. All right, step 3 and 4 of this is setting time limits. All right, so after you've been getting close to them, at your proximity, getting your attention, you're giving instruction, then you want, you know, at some point, kids will stop cooperating. And that's why praise is important. That's why, you know, providing other motivating aspects is important, because after a while they will start to drift a little bit. So heavily praise, and your child provides their attention, and you praise cooperation, but start setting limits. So first you're just happy that they're listening to you and they're cooperating, but after a while you want to make sure that they're doing this in an appropriate amount of time. And so start setting those limits. Like, I need you to put your backpack away from me. And if you can do it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, I like using that sequence because I can stretch that out as long as I want to. Or like, hey, I'm going to need you to turn the TV off. In 5, I can wait like 6 seconds. 4, but they just know when we get to 1, they're going to be required to engage or initiate the action. But you want to definitely start setting those time limits, because if they don't cooperate, you want to have structure. And when they don't cooperate, next step is what's called sit and decide, where the kid gets to sit until they're ready to cooperate with your instruction. Now, sometimes this can be a little more complex. If they have access to a tangible that they already have, you want to make sure that you remove that tangible item. So when it's time to put the Game Boy away or the Nintendo Switch away, allowing them to sit and decide to put that away is probably not a great idea, because they're still going to have access to that Switch or that, you know, electronic device. So in that situation, it's like, you know what? I'm going to need to take that device, and you're not going to get this back until you complete the thing that I asked you to do. And maybe it's to put their homework away in their backpack, and they're on the Switch and they're giving you the kind of, oh, I'll do it when I'm done. At that point, you go and say, nope, I'm going to take the thing that's motivating for you, and then you can sit there as long as you want to. You're not going to get this thing back that's very powerfully motivating you until you complete the activity that I asked you to do. And then you'll do the whole set and things. Like, it's up to you. You can control this. You can get this back whenever you want to, but it's on you to complete the instructions that I gave you. Sometimes if they're not escaping too much, you can designate an area. And it's like, okay, you go to that area, you can stay there as long as you want until you complete this activity that I gave you. Now, the issue is you're not going to get access to anything else. And so the candy store is closed. There's access to your iPad, YouTube, your favorite snacks, none of that until you clean your room. That's the example. And then they have a little bit of control of the situation. You don't want to fight them, but as long as you're controlling the purse strings and the things that are motivating for them, it's a good chance that they're going to start to listen and they're going to start to respond a lot quicker. And to the point, block all access to motivators or reinforcers until cooperation is complete. And sometimes you don't want to make it a struggle or conflict. You definitely want it to be about, you can control this. You can get this back when you want to, but that's only going to happen until you complete the thing that I asked you to do. And that's the thing with cooperation for the kids. We don't want it to be contentious all the time. We don't want it to be a conflict. Now, obviously, you'll have to pick your battles. Every once in a while, there'll be a huge battle that you'll have to fight. But for the most part, we want this to be, a collaboration between you and the kid. I know that sounds bad, but you definitely want the kid to learn that this is just how things are going to go in this environment. And cooperating and listening is very good skills. It's going to benefit you in the long run. And then after you've gone through those steps, evaluate how things are going. Take inventory of what's working, what's not working, what items are motivating for the kid. Has the sit and decide method been effective? Doesn't always work with every kid. Sometimes kids will engage in more behaviors because they're required to go sit in a place. I know a lot of people use timeout, but not all kids, go to timeout willingly. So you'll have to determine kind of what works in these situations and what's probably not the most effective thing. And if it's causing more behavior, and if it's causing more conflict between you and the kid, that particular thing might not work with that kid. You might want to go back and evaluate. All right, so last step, cooperation chart. In the article, it's called non-cooperation jar, where it's a response cost measure where they lose points or tokens or whatever's in the jar when they don't cooperate. I tend to like to do it the other way, where you provide, some sort of tokens for cooperation. Every time they cooperate, you're going to put, a marble in a jar. And the more you listen, the more marbles are going to go into that jar. And then you start using that as an economy for them getting access to their favorite things. So YouTube is going to cost you 20 points. And 20 points might get you 30 minutes. And trust me, once they figure that out, they're going to be trying to find things to do to earn more of those points. Access to iPad, 10 points. That'll get you 15 minutes. And then they start to learn, the more I listen, the more I cooperate, the more I comply, the more access I'm going to have to the things that I want in life. And we will send you guys this slide. And this is this website that I go to, freeprintablebehaviorcharts.com. And they have all these amazing charts that you can use. I am not the most creative at all. A lot of my staff have sweet, amazing skills that they use to make all these designs. I'm not creative. I have to rely on this website to do this. And so this is an example of what some of these charts look like. So let's use Hello Kitty. So I think you start here, and every time you do well, we'll color that in, And before you know it, if you want to get access to your favorite toy, little kitty's gonna have to make it all the way there. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So that's 14 instructions. Maybe that can be a little in there. That's about how many instructions you give to a kid over the course of the day. And they know when they get here, that's going to mean access to the iPad. The only way they're going to get access to the iPad is to complete all these stars. And sometimes you can make it very, very easy. You can give them instructions to things that they like doing. Like, oh, go to the kitchen and get an ice cream. Oh, that's good listening. I like how you did that. And some of these can be things that they know, they're the preferred things and they like doing them. And other times it can be for things that aren't very, fun for them. Like cleaning your room, or taking out the trash, or doing your homework. Maybe you get 4 for doing your homework. But that's how we're going to increase their cooperation. So follow through the steps. Increase your proximity. Make sure you get their undivided attention. Start setting some limits on that, timing it, sit and decide. And then make sure things are working, and then go from there. But through all this, we want to make sure that our new best friend is praised. And how do we do that? One of the things we're going to try to do is we're going to try to increase the ratio of praise to criticism or reprimand. a good ratio is probably 12-1. Some kids appear very bad and they're always doing small things, and all you hear all day is, don't do this, stop doing that, better don't do that, you get in trouble for doing this. And they rarely ever hear praise when they've done something good. And so, catch them being good is kind of a model. You want to make sure you start focusing and start kind of realigning your focus and perspective on, I'm going to make a bigger deal out of the behaviors that they're doing that are good that I want to see more of. That's a very valuable tool, and it's just praise. And all kids like different types of praise or social motivators, as I mentioned: hugs, high fives, tickles, just their parents saying something nice to them, getting in their parents' good graces, getting their parents' approval. All those things are very valuable for kids. And then make it clear why you're praising. Great eye contact, good looking. Oh, I love when you follow mommy's instructions. I love when you listen to dada and do these certain things. Like, all those things are very, very important to kids. Sometimes they could be doing a bunch of squirrely stuff that you might not want to, like, you know what, pick my battles, I'm gonna ignore that. Or you can start to say, oh, it'd be better if you did X, Y, and Z. You always want to be, get in the habit of telling them the things that you want them to do. Sometimes identifying the strengths and skills, like good listener, you're a good helper, I like how you put your toys away without me asking. Like, all those things are ways for you to provide praise for them. So you're always trying to strengthen the things that are desirable and spending less time on the things that you probably are going to need to correct at some point. Explain the overall benefit and providing appropriate follow-up actions. And once again, if they don't cooperate, you want to make sure you go through the process of giving them sort of incentive to listen to the things that you said. So I've been using this chart for probably 15 years, give or take, maybe 20 years probably. 101 ways to praise your child. And sometimes I tell parents, try to make sure you use all of these at one point, because you really want to make it about those connections and connecting with them when they're following and engaging in behaviors that we want to see. So you want to just praise the crap out of all those good behaviors. And for some parents, it's a focus. You have to change your focus. I know sometimes, we think parenting is, and I get this a lot in my field too. People think correcting behaviors is focusing on the negative behaviors. And when those negative behaviors occur, getting very punitive and disciplined and all those things, when, there's some of that, but the main focus of what we do is trying to increase those appropriate behaviors. And sometimes they have to be taught. They're not in the kids' repertoire. We know that. And sometimes it's just a matter of motivation. You can earn more of the things that are motivating for you by engaging in, I would say, good behaviors or positive behaviors than engaging in, just normal kid behaviors. And for some kids, the more they're allowed to engage in it, the more they think it's okay. And we have to make sure that we're setting those limits. And most of the limits come from just teaching them what it is we want them to do. You can shape that with just praise. Because now they start to become aware, like, whenever I do these things over here, I get praise and hugs and kisses and high fives and access to iPad and YouTube and, my favorite snacks. When I do these things, they aren't as profitable for me. Kids start to, become aware of that, and they start engaging in more of the pro-social behaviors. All right. So the last thing we want to talk about is when to reinforce or when to provide access to those motivators. And there's two ways to do this. One, we want to reinforce the number of responses. Okay, every 5 math problems, you can earn a piece of candy. Clean your room 2 times, then you earn access to the iPad. So the limit here, that should be 5. Eat 5 string beans and you get a scoop of ice cream. Let's say your kid normally gets 2 small scoops of ice cream, so you're probably going to be good for 10 string beans. And then always start with short requirements. I think oftentimes we think just because we're going to give them access to the ice cream, they're going to eat 25 string beans. Probably not going to happen if they've been eating 0. Even 5 is probably a stretch. You probably want to say, all right, 2 for a scoop, maybe you cut the scoop in half, and then if you're lucky, you get 4 for the equivalent of 1 scoop of ice cream. A couple of days of that, a couple of times, a couple of cycles through, And then you can say, okay, now let's see if we can go to 6 string beans. And now we can go to 8. And then you start thinking about, okay, what's a reasonable number of string beans for a kid to eat to get, the minimum nutritional value? Sometimes some kids are never going to do, enormous amounts of responses for certain things. And you have to be aware of that. Some kids are never going to eat, and I don't even know if 25 string beans is a decent serving or not. They're never going to eat 20 string beans to get access to an ice cream. If you can get them to 10, that sounds like that has reasonable nutritional value. So sometimes you're going to reinforce responses. We're wrapping up here soon so we can get to questions. Other times you're going to reinforce time. Read for 10 minutes, and then you get a break. Good behavior for 20 minutes in the grocery store, meaning hands in the basket, not grabbing things, helping mommy or daddy pick out some item, and then you get the candy bar that you want. Once again, start with short intervals. If your kid has never gone to the grocery store for 1 hour, just because you're giving them a candy bar, they're probably not going to make an hour. Perfectly honest with you. 20 minutes, that's a third of the overall time. And that's with 20 minutes with a few probably smaller, inappropriate behaviors, but you still want to reinforce because you want them to get used to that contingency of this can be profitable for you in the grocery store, which is a pretty good thing for the family because now that's something most families need to do on a weekly basis is grocery shop. So now if you can improve your kid's behavior in the grocery store and no one there wants to no longer strangle your kid, that's a very positive thing. So, start with time and don't be afraid to set timers. Okay, I actually have a timer going now to sort of focus me on the time component. But do this thing for 3 minutes. Set a timer. I know Target always sells these little send timers and have like 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Get those. Those are good things to use. Like, okay, do this for 5 minutes. Set it, and then when it dies, time sand goes through the little things. Oh, time's over. Make sure you provide the reinforcer. But in order to get the behaviors that you want, it is important that you make it motivating for the kid. I know we think all kids are just supposed to be good kids or all kids are just supposed to do certain things, but if you think back on your childhood, you will soon start to realize it's not like that. Most kids are going to do things that are in their best benefit. And if they can steal cookies from the cookie jar, they're probably more likely to do that than clean the room to get actually the cookies. Except if you lock, the cookie jar, and the only way they can get access to them is to clean their room, it might take a couple days, week, possibly 2, but they are definitely going to start to come around to understanding in order to get these things that I want, I'm going to have to engage in these behaviors. And most of those behaviors are not going to kill them. It doesn't kill it. I've never heard a kid dying from cleaning up their room or brushing their teeth. And so they'll get over the initial trauma of having to do it and their parent being so awful. But when they start to see the benefits, they can do a much better job of engaging those behaviors. And so the key to this is understanding people who engage in behaviors do it for favorable outcomes. As parents, you get to control those outcomes. If you engage in positive behaviors, you're going to earn access to X, Y, and Z. You don't, you just want to earn access to it. You don't need to fight, you don't need to scream. You can say, them are the rules. X, Y, and Z gets this. You complete X, Y, and Z, have no problem delivering the item. Do not, that just lets me know you didn't want it bad enough. And you can start using those phrasing so that way you don't have to pick fights with them. Or when they pick fights with you, you can have very rational comebacks. You don't have to scream. I think sometimes also people think discipline involves screaming and like increased volume of delivering the reprimands, but it doesn't. Let the reinforcers and motivating items work for themselves. If you're going to work to earn cookies, you either earn the cookies or you do not earn the cookies. And there's no need to fight about that. Tomorrow's another day. You have another chance to earn the cookies. All right. That's my email address there if anyone wants to contact me with some specific questions. It's all lowercase though, but the font that I'm using for this particular training has all capitals. All right. I think I did okay on time. I want to open it up to questions. All right, we're all back.